Peter, thank you for joining me on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate you coming out. This is the first time we've actually done this live on Easy, so that's exciting. You're not my typical guest. Usually we're dealing with vintage dealers and sellers, or, I'm excited to chat to you because you are an industrial designer, VP of Oakley for a long time. In the vintage world, your designs are coming back with force right now, and they seem to be, you've created lots of timeless works that have shown up, in gas stations even. Like, people copied these designs all over the place because they were so timeless and they were so popular for a long period of time. So congrats on all the success, first of all.
Oh, thank you so much. It is pretty interesting, right? That, it's come back a little bit more than usual maybe. And I think, we talked before that, style and designs are somewhat cyclical, right? Things come back around.
Of course, yeah.
And it's really gratifying. And, I feel blessed that the things that I've worked on, had the opportunity to work on, have been recognized as such.
Yeah, totally.
I tend to believe good designs, will outlast the test of time.
Yeah. And like, when I look at fashion and the resurgence of styles and trends, typically it was like an 18-year cycle. That's kind of what I learned doing this business. And it seems like that's sort of the time period, maybe in the midst of your heyday working with Oakley, 18, 20 years.
Yeah, possibly. And here's the thing, it's interesting about trends and things like that. There's always going to be trends that are relevant at a particular point in time.
Yeah.
But the way I design is they're all based on fundamental principles, and those don't change over time.
So that's interesting. What are when you say fundamental principles, like, what are these principles, and like, how did you develop that in your own works?
Sure. I mean, some of the principles are proportions, right? Proportions. There are certain forms that you would go after that elicit certain response from you. So, an example. Let me think of one. Let's say a stealth, the first stealth fighter, stealth bomber, that very angular looking pyramid thing. It's kind of like, whoa, what is that? That's kind of weird, right? Well, those kind of shapes and forms, you can imagine trying to touch it. It's not going to feel very comfy, right? It's a little bit jagged.
It's edgy, jagged.
It's edgy,
yeah.
You think of maybe, a nice vintage, classic Porsche with these beautiful forms and fenders. Your eye goes to that. Your eyes follow those forms. Like, wow, I can almost like touch that with my eyes. Same thing happens when you look at any of the things that anybody's designed. You're going to look at it first and make your assessment of maybe what does that feel like? What is that? How is that affecting me? And the things that I've learned in terms of fundamental principles are from design school, from all the masters and designers before my time, and what has been found to work and doesn't work, or what are the cause and effect of different things that you would do, right? Along with my own experimentation of trying to do things.
And of course, like, when we're looking at the designs you make, obviously there's functionality to everything because these are functional products. They're built to serve a purpose. They're glasses. They're for sport. You obviously have to have that element in there, and then you design around that and come up with something interesting that appeals to the customer base at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to throw it back here. I want to bring it. Tell us about your education, how you got into this, because we talked off camera and you said you kind of stumbled into this role, into design.
Yeah.
It maybe wasn't something you thought about when you were really young.
Right. Okay. So we'll go back to high school real quick. Like a lot of people, I went to high school, and when I got done, I grew up actually in Las Vegas, so not California, and got out of high school, and I got good grades, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I really didn't know, but I knew I didn't want to learn about it in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Right. With all due respect, still my hometown. But so I came out to California where my siblings lived, and I just went to a junior college, near my sister's house in Pasadena, and it was it's still there, Pasadena City College, a junior college. And I just took GE classes, right? Just took my GEs, getting good grades, and trying to figure out what I want to do.
Typical figure out as you go.
Yeah,
see
totally.
How I'll learn.
Totally. Yeah. Same as my son's doing that or did that, and other people. So real typical path. And one day I've got extra, space in my schedule. I'm looking at the syllabus and I see 2D design. Learn the principles of color and shape and blah, 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 and I read it and like, wow, hey, this sounds like fun, right? Okay, cool. I take the class. Wow, this is really cool, right? I take more design classes as I'm taking all my GE classes, and I start winning some awards and stuff. And then I remember also...
So right away, as you got into it, you were winning design awards through the school?
A little bit, yeah. Not right away, maybe a couple terms in, but I think my work was recognized as different. And
did you have did you draw as a child, or did it all just come through those college years?
That's a great question. You know what? When I was a kid, I would doodle like your typical, futuristic city, bubble under the ocean type of stuff.
Okay.
But nothing
that makes a lot of sense.
There you go. But nothing that I would say is like really artistic. But it's interesting. My family is very artistic. So my mother, she was always very artistic, whether crocheting something, making something, always really beautiful. Yeah. And my father actually was very well renowned for his calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy. So big Chinese characters, right? Yeah. And then my oldest sister is an architect. So I actually wanted to be an architect because I thought that was cool what she did. Yeah. And then my other sister, she was doing illustration all the time, beautiful paintings and things. And my brother could always, for whatever, he could bust out a caricature all the time. So this was just, I don't know, I guess it was there, but I never really considered it to be anything, like, whatever, it's cool, right? So it wasn't until I think I started getting some formal training that I found out that I have some affinity towards it. Like, wow, this is really cool. This is an interesting relationship of this to that. And then in the classes I would take, again, it's at junior college, right? But the interesting thing is those teachers that I had, they were actually college professors at Art Center, which is a private art school in Pasadena. And it's renowned worldwide. And they would teach up there and teach at the junior college. And I found out because they would teach there because, it's a private college, prestige, high level students in education. Yeah. And they would teach at the junior college because kids want to learn, but then they also get, all their medical coverage because it's a state run, it's a city college, right? Yeah. So they're covering the bases. And then I later found out that PCC, Pasadena City College, is a great feeder school of talent that goes into the private school. So kids from all over the world would apply or whatever, and the counselors at Art Center would look at them and say, hey, this is great, but you need to work on this and this and this before you come up. Yeah. So why don't you enroll here at PCC? So they were kind of helping because it's very inexpensive, right, to go to a junior college. And then you learn all these things before you're allowed to go to something serious, right, where it's serious money and dedication. And that was part of it too. During that time I was at PCC, my first teacher that I took us on a field trip. Okay. And I had a tour of the campus at Art Center, which is beautiful, up in the hills above the Rose Bowl. And I remember, I still remember this day, walking in to the building. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. You walk in, and the first area is a student gallery. So it's just artwork, It's like beautiful products and images and drawings and different levels from your first term to your 8th term, so everything in between. And I just remember walking through there and my mouth agape, oh my God, and just stumbling. And this is what I want to do with my life.
That's like your aha epiphany moment, it's time, I'm going to go this path.
Absolutely. I didn't even know that. The thought was there's a profession that does this, right? Yeah. So at that point, then I decided that's what I'm going to do. And then I dove in deeper into all the classes you could take at PCC. Yeah. And that's when I started winning stuff. Oh, cool. Right. And being recognized for...
It sounds like it came pretty natural once you kind of dedicated yourself to design. It flowed. Was it a hard process to learn, or did you... did it just come out of you and it just felt natural?
I think it, if I stop and think about it, I guess it probably feel natural, but I don't want to say that thinking that it's just, easy, that it is easy or natural. I think because I wanted to do it So my brain receptors are like open to all this new information and these relationships and things I didn't understand or even know that there was an understanding of. So once I was able to open my mind to what this whole design world was like, how to create something from nothing, and the whys and this and that, what's good, what's bad, what's subjective, what's absolute, that it wasn't hard. It was just intriguing, right? You're just absorbing. I'm learning, and then I'm trying to practice what I'm learning, and maybe because I could understand it, I could emulate or at least take what I'm learning and apply it in a way that was recognized a little bit more so than maybe some of my fellow students at the time.
Yeah. So you had told us too that one of your first projects was making a bootleg sunglass.
Yeah.
At college, you went through the process, you made a mold, you were telling us, like, run us through this process. I think that's super interesting because it's that was probably your first kick at the can of this. And, there is, we just want to know how that all happened, especially early on before all the technology.
Well, I will say that I love how you phrase it, but actually that's not my real first foray in either designing something or copying something.
Okay.
I would say that happened at a very early age, and I actually probably neglected to think about it, though I didn't draw, I was very creative, and we didn't have a lot of money, right? But my family believed in education, and they believed in creative endeavors. So I remember my architect sister giving me Legos.
Oh, nice.
And Christmas, birthdays, not just my sister.
I love Legos. I still play with Legos with my kids to this day.
Dude, I swear to God, it is the most amazing thing. In fact, anyway, now I'm going to jump in. But so the first foray of designing was emulating things I saw on TV. Like, if this is a new toy, oh, that's a cool, whatever gun foam thing. Okay, well, I can't buy it, so I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that's a cool spaceship. I'm going to make it. That's a cool whatever. I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it looked kind of like it. Sometimes it didn't. So I would say that's probably my first try at paying an homage by way of copying something.
Yeah. Right? Well, that's great. That's amazing to hear because, maybe my kids will go in industrial design. They're into it. The Legos are the way to go.
Absolutely, man. The Swiss know their thing. I swear. So that would be my first foray, and Lego stories we can go into. That's a whole other chapter.
We want to know these glasses, the process of making the copies and.
Absolutely. So that whole idea came from, which is ironic, so in design school, I'm at Art Center now, and in the mode of thinking design everything, and I always appreciated Oakley eyewear. It's super cool. It's different.
Yeah.
Man, that's just sick. It's kind of expensive. I'm a broke ass student. What am I gonna do? I want cool stuff, but I'm a broke ass student. Now, I will say that during this time too, I actually, of my own hobby, would collect sunglasses.
Okay.
Right? I actually had, decent collection, maybe 15 to 20 things. And I would go to the fashion district in LA, or I'd be on the beach, Venice or someplace. And I'm picking out things that I think are cool.
And this is not particularly brands, just designs that are nice.
There's just designs I think are interesting and stuff. And nothing was probably more expensive than maybe $12, $15, right? Because I'm on a student budget. So in that mode, I see these Oakleys, man, I want that, I want to use that. And, and you're building models all the time. So you're in shop, so you got to wear, shop glasses that are crappy. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I've got the education to make a mold. So I did have enough money to buy one pair for sunglasses. I loved them. And that's what happened first. And I loved them.
What style was this at that point?
It was the razor blade.
The razor blade. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a razor blade here, but it was the razor blade. And it's a shield, a cylindrical lens, beautiful arm that comes down and does what we call this hammer stem thing.
Yeah, and that was to block out the side sun too, right?
No, the lenses by that was to position the the correct location of the arc on your ear.
Okay.
So that arc needed to be lower than the top trajectory. So it was a design decision. I believe Jim designed that frame. That coming off the top of the frame, but you had your ears down here. So how do you get this down here? So you went angle and put a nice curve, and that design like, oh my God,
Yeah, I
that's
remember.
so awesome, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's a great example of being unique, creative, and solving a problem,
Yeah.
right? It's not just cause, which, you know, I've seen designs that people do that just cause, like, okay, whatever, you know, it's really superficial. But anyway, so I had a pair I bought for myself. I saved up, or maybe it was Christmas money. I don't know. I loved them. I'm like, dude, I want to wear this for my shop class, but I don't want to scratch these ones up. And they're, you know, I think they were blue and white. And so I decided I'd make a mold. So using silicone, I made a silicone mold, proper way, registrations, everything of both the center frame, the stems, left, right. I made a mold, made a couple, had some failures until I got it right, put a lens in there, and people are seeing me wear this in the shop. They're like, dude, that's so cool.
Yeah, amazing.
So one of my first self projects was paying homage or knocking off Oakley. Unknowingly,
I think you've done enough. They don't care at this point. It's okay.
But the interesting is, unknowingly, I end up working for Oakley, creating new things for other people to knock off, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? So it's
which probably
it's
some
really,
of the most knocked off glasses maybe out there, which is crazy to think, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like the ultimate like test of what you've done, right? Because everybody wanted it.
I suppose so. And maybe they take the same tact, you know, they want it, they don't want to afford it, or businesses want to sell the same thing for cheaper.
Yeah, totally.
You know, they say imitation is the highest form of flattery, I believe,
Yeah,
right? And I believe it, you know. So.
And again, like when you look at that, you just you're always staying one step ahead. Of course, you guys work because you're always putting out new designs, right? They can copy them and you're on to the next one already.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
An interesting thing I thought about, you know, looking at your time at Oakley, you know, you have a very distinct design style, you know, sleek, futuristic, industrial, I guess I would say. And Oakley started, from my view of it, like more surf maybe, more like the logo was different. You know, it definitely made a transition during your era. Now, when you got with the company, was that like something spoke about, or was that kind of like you just came in, started designing what you thought was cool, and then it just went that way? Like, explain that transition period and how you got into the company.
Yeah. So I think when Jim found me, I think he was in the mode of evolving the brand.
Okay.
Changing, growing. And when I got to Oakley, he'd already changed the logo to some degree. So, you know, I think if you've been around for a while, or you can look at the old product, there is the factory pilot logo. That's what we call it. The one that's got an O and all these arcs, right?
Kind of connects the whole...
It connects the whole thing, and it's, you know, relatively rectangular, right, from that. And then Jim changed it where he stretched it out, and the O was no longer a perfect circle. It was more of a pill shape. Right, so radii, two straight lines, another radii, and then all the connections. And that was actually, you know, engraved on lenses, and we started using that as a logo. And in fact, here it is. It's on this one. I'm sorry, your audience can't see, but
yeah, we can throw some pictures.
You can see that, right?
So that was pre your time.
That was just before my time.
Okay.
And so when I came on board, as I was creating designs, working with Jim, showing him stuff, he really liked what I was doing. And for myself, because quite frankly, I got into design because I thought this would be fun. Yeah. That's the only real reason I got into it. So when I would draw things on projects I liked, oftentimes I'd do little logos of it. And in fact, you know, like zeros, M-frame, whatever, those are the logos on the packaging are the logos I drew. And Jim really liked them. He's like, wow, that's really cool. You know, we should use it. Oh, really? Okay, cool. So he was seeing what I was doing, designing and doing the graphics for them. And then one day he just asked me, hey, what do you think about working on our logo? I said, yeah, sure. You know, I mean, as casual as that is how casual it was. Yeah. Not knowing how magical that moment was, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Looking back. And I think because, you know, his vision of where he wants Oakley, like I would say, you know, Jim has always been ahead of his time, always. So, you know, where we were was just where we were, but his mind was in the future, right? So we could relate, and so we're talking about the future and what he's thinking and how he perceives it, and then I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm like making the Kool-Aid. I'm all about it, right? Totally. And so designing the logo, which quite frankly most people don't know I did.
Yeah, I was going to bring
Jim.
that up. I read that. It's amazing.
Yeah, in fact, when people find that out, they're more impressed with that than any of the stuff I've done, which is interesting.
Well, because it kind of outlives all the product. Even it's still something that you see on product now, and it's
absolutely,
it's amazing, and it's branding. It's what's ingrained in people's memories, and
absolutely, it's a mark known around the world, right?
And then it went onto the clothing and all the other things that you might not have even been designing, but it was still your design. Yeah,
and it's a real. I mean, it's super cool, right? It's a compliment from that standpoint. But back to your question, I think it's the right place and right time, Drew, just like anything else, right?
Yeah.
He found what he perceived as the right person at the right time. Same for me. I found the right brand, the right boss, the right environment to let me do my best work. And, from that and knowing how well that worked with a great team that was there, with very talented people, we created some amazing things. And therefore later, as a leader, that's all I did. My secret of success in that was just try and create the best environment so everyone can do their best work. Right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it's not a hard thing to do, and this place is super cool too.
You
so I
say
can
that,
the same
but
thing.
it's not. It can be a hard thing to do.
It's not a hard principle to understand.
No, for sure.
But you're right. To achieve that takes a lot of work.
And I think, it sounds magical in the sense like he found you. You were in the right mindset to be doing what he was kind of already evolving into doing. Maybe.
Yeah.
Those things don't just always happen. Like it's tough. Like you could look for people on the right path for a long time and not find the right person. And I think there's a bit of luck. There's a bit of synergy. There's a bit of like manifestation. There's so many things that go into that, making that all work. And it sounds like what you guys had at that time was like what it needed and a perfect synergy there.
Dude, it was a magical time. I mean, different people have asked me about it, and I gave a description that someone said, wow, yeah, that's really good. A former colleague of mine, we were talking yesterday, but like at that time, dude, it was like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I swear to God.
Love that. Yeah.
The stuff that we would do and the conversations and like, hey, how about this? Oh yeah, boom. How about that? Wow. And also it's a little bit, of us against the world mentality. Right? Like I don't care what all the big guys are doing. It makes no difference to me. We're gonna do what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And they could, and I don't give a shit. And I would tell you that part of that spirit is important in creating some pretty impactful designs. Now, we use words like brave. That's pretty brave, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I agree. And I love the results of some of that bravery. But I will tell you, being brave also means you have to be willing to accept that there is a high potential of failure. And, I think artists understand that, right?
Yeah.
And businesses do not typically understand that. The tolerance for failure for a business is very low.
Yeah.
So that's part of the synergy I felt like I had with Jim and that the aura around him. That dude was a gambler, man. He'd put it on the line. It's like win or die. It's you pick. So, and him being your boss, wanting great designs and us risking like, wow, that's really scary, crazy, cool. Yeah, isn't it great?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got goosebumps, right? That's the kind of thing. That's why I call it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. What kind of boss is like that? Typically not a rational thinking, corporate person, right?
Yeah,
of a brand. So the fact that he started Oakley, it's built the way he envisioned it, allowed me to be helpful and be additive and be creative and work together, and his ideas were just so amazing and crazy where it's like, oh, what? I had to take a step back, what? And then we talk about it, like, okay, and then try to figure out how to make that actually happen. And then when it happens, it's like, oh my God, we made that happen.
Yeah. So I want to get into like your design inspiration and some of your products, of course, but a little bit more on this topic. Like it's super interesting. I didn't even think we were going to go here, but you're saying he was a crazy cool boss. Like how did he manage this? And was there failures like during this? You're saying like a lot of bravery happening. You guys are doing things maybe that's like way left field or whatever's happening. And was there some things that were like this totally flopped, or did it all kind of work out, and how did he manage that? Because of course it's like that can work out, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and then you have to obviously take those consequences, maybe big financial losses or whatever come along with that. Like,
well, I think it's speculation on my part of how he handled things. But like I said, I would view Jim as, a legit gambler in the sense that, if you're gonna go down that path, you're gonna have wins, and you have to accept the losses.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure he had strategies for that. But to answer your question about did the brand have some failures and things, and I would answer that, yeah, there's probably some products we made that didn't make as much money, right? But that's offset by a mountain load of the things that our customers and consumers just ate up, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But I would tell you that the things you see, for example, that made it to the world, are the refined versions of the crazy ass ideas and experiments we had prior to releasing.
Yeah.
So one way, and maybe your audience would appreciate this. One way of creating something, let's say we like to think it's amazing, is when you're designing and creating, you're going past that. So like if this is the realm of acceptability,
Yeah.
right? Like typical society. Here's acceptability. When I was at Oakley, our task was always trying to be pushing these boundaries, right? We're not playing it here.
Yeah.
There's no fun playing it here, right? You try to keep pushing the boundaries out. So what we created oftentimes like, oh man, dude, that is sick, but that is just too much. So we'd have to scale back on ourselves.
Yeah.
And then, through some maturity, right, figure it out, and then we would produce something that we feel that emulates what the brand stands for, which, it is to be unique, performance-based. We don't want to be like everybody else. It is for the brave and the bold. And something very functional and something that you will, if you look at it, it will really resonate with you. I think Oakley in the early years was really for a lot of people that wanted to show how individual they actually are, because we are all individuals, right? But some of us want to fade into the background, and some of us want to be in the front row, right? So I think Oakley was a little bit more for people in the front row or the front half or whatever. And as more people got there, more people in the back would feel comfortable and come up.
Yeah, I do see that like through my life, like Oakley as a brand, and you see like ads or certain athletes who are more on the wild side, typically riding or skiing or whatever for Oakley. And they were always like the wild and crazy, maybe partiers, but also amazing athletes. And like it was those people who were looking to be recognized,
Yeah, and and they have fans, and they have fans that aren't exactly crazy, but they appreciate it.
Totally.
So it's the same thing, So with that, like I said, the designs were brave, and there were going to be some that didn't work out as well as we thought, so we can call that a failure. But certainly, the attempt to create something amazing was always the goal.
Yeah, and you obviously can see that the brand never wavered, and it went on to do amazing things throughout a big span of time. So obviously couldn't have had that big of a loss at any point. I liken it to like, you look at like runway fashion, and these designers will come out and do like a crazy runway.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, no one's ever gonna wear that maybe, but we can tailor this down, make a palatable version that's still interesting and crazy and cool and represents what we're doing, but yet maybe those designs start in another realm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have you can attack things many different ways, but one way, if you're gonna you can create designs that are purely meant as brand building and awareness, right? So you create something that's really bold and somewhat shocking. Whoa. And people were like, whoa, that's crazy. That's not quite for me. Oh, but the other stuff they make is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can adapt that, right?
Totally.
So those things definitely happen, right? In terms of how you're designing. So it just really depends what your objectives are when you're creating something. Is it something to melt into the background? Is it something to lead the pack? Is it something to work within the pack? What is it trying to do? And those are really important things that need to guide your creative efforts.
Yeah.
And
that's sort of as like a brand is tiered out. Like you have the things for everyday user, things for the people that want to stand out. It looks like you designed on the other end of that, which is the things that typically stand out? Or did you have your hands in kind of all of it?
For better or worse, I had my hands in all of it. First, let me say this, that I am not the only designer for Oakley.
Of course, yeah.
And so there are many super talented designers. I hired quite a few of them, during my time, and they've evolved and continue to take the brand farther and all different directions. But when I was doing a lot of the design work, I did work on a lot of the flagship products. But I also I did products that were more back in the background, the volume pieces that keep the lights on forever, right? And so I've done a little bit of everything. I think oftentimes I just get recognized for the things that people, just the cool things people have in mind. But I've literally done hundreds of designs.
Wow.
And I have over 100 design and utility patents in my name for Oakley. Right. And
wow. So the designer gets named on the patent.
You used to, depending on the impact of the design.
That's so interesting. So, but obviously the company owns the rights to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's for Oakley so that they can protect the intellectual property, because this is intellectual property, right? These designs, there's something that's created with strategy, tactics, and everything else. So it belongs to Oakley, and they used to patent protect almost everything. So then they can go and enforce it, right? So,
which, I mean, Oakley's job of enforcing bootlegs and copies on their patents is probably a lot of full-time people's job.
It used to be, these full-time department, and they'd be working internationally with like Interpol and whoever, you name whatever agency. Dude, it'd be like, we get a little memo like, oh yeah, we just shut this down, we confiscated this, it's worth about $3 million.
Yeah, like $500,000 pairs or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. And really, it's a good thing because it protects the brand, right? Like, let's say,
you need it, of course.
You're a legit customer, and you buy something and you're proud, you wear it, works for you. You see some other dude wearing something that has a logo, but that doesn't look right. It looks like crap and stuff. It pulls everything down, right?
Oh yeah.
Protecting
the brand integrity and all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they used to do that when maybe we had less things out there, but I think over time and maybe business decisions, I don't believe it's done as often. I'm not there now, so I can't speak to what's happening now. But all I can say is, during my time, I think all this stuff is, has patents and whatever else. My name's on quite a few things. But I have, to your original question, designed all levels from flagship to mainstream products, and which is fine. It's good as a design. But don't get me wrong, everyone wants to sign up for the flagship, right? Because you get to usually break new ground, and the budget for that project is sometimes a blank check. So do what you want, So, but it's all included.
That's like, now you look at a company like that, working your way up to that position, like that's like the coveted spot. Get to design the things with the blank check, right? Like
of course.
You got to put your hours in on the floor before you get to the top, right?
Absolutely, because a blank check to an untrained person could be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Totally. Right. Like it could be so financially, lopsided that it just doesn't make sense no matter how you look at it.
So let's talk about your design inspiration, how you come up with these ideas, where what are you looking at in the world to create these designs? We talked off camera about symmetry, and it comes up when I read about you in articles and things. That seems to be very important to you, and like, what does that mean to you? And,
sure. Symmetry is one of the main characteristics of defined beauty, right? You guys may have, seen things where you take a quote unquote beautiful person and, bisect their face with a line, and they've done measurements where beautiful people tend to have very symmetrical faces, right? Typically.
So this is like something that they've run data on and done studies on.
That's what I believe, right? Yeah. And when I look at it, like, okay, it seems reasonable. Right.
Yeah, totally.
So therefore, the majority, all of the sunglasses, they're symmetrical left to right. But even you look at the logo, the Oakley logo, right, that ellipse.
Yeah.
It's symmetrical on multiple planes, right, like left to right, up and down, and it's designed to look as if. It's a very simple logo, right?
Very simple.
But
sometimes it's the best.
Exactly, and the idea is that it's meant to look as if it's moving through space quickly, right? Linearly, it's going, it's moving, it's traveling, and
It's like I think of it as like could be like a black hole in space. It could be like a bubble moving through water. Like there's so many things that it could be, and you visualize
Absolutely.
different things, right?
Absolutely. When I'm thinking about it, it's this traveling fast, precisely with performance through space. It's an abstract eyeball,
Yeah.
right? And it's all these other things. So symmetry certainly has its place, right? But that's not to say that asymmetry isn't beautiful by any means. It just depends what we're talking about. But if your question is really where do I get the inspiration for some of the work I do, it varies. But one way I like to explain it is if I'm designing, let's say in this case, I'm designing a watch.
Yeah.
Or you could pick a sunglass. If I'm designing a watch, the last place I look for inspiration is another watch, somebody else's watch. If I'm doing sunglasses, the last place I ever look, if at all, is another sunglass. Because if you do that, which is very common, people get inspiration from whatever, you're going to have that in your head. So when you're trying to create something, you're going to ultimately regurgitate that out in some way, right?
Even if consciously you're not trying, it's in there. It's too
If
late.
you're not trying, yeah, because I like that watch. Let me do a watch that I like. Let's just think about what I just said.
Yeah.
Right? I just tied that together. Right? So,
See, like-
and I equate it to like,
Let's show. This is the. When I look at this watch, like for some reason I think Terminator 2 or like a robot, and it like there's curves to it, but it's also like very I don't know, the thickness of the lens gives it like it just has a robotic feel to me. And like maybe just talk about your the way you went about this one.
well, so on this one, the inspiration of this one is not a watch. The inspiration for this one comes from eyewear. This one came from a specific design that we happen to have on the couch. Oh, not on the couch, on the table.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a Pro-M frame.
Okay.
So now, we're going to look at this first, and then you're going to look at that. So if you look at the Pro-M frame, you look at all these compound, very fluid dynamic forms.
Yeah.
Look at this wing, right? This wing-like feature designed to slice through the air, right? And all these beautiful forms. Now, you see this wing? Now look at this. You see the wing?
Yeah, you see it here.
You see it there, right? And all these compound forms and this fluid dynamic form and compound surfaces. This thick sapphire lens is a continuation of that form. And the only way to get that to happen, it's got to be a thick lens, which acts as a slight magnifier.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
So again, all the little logic and rationales and connection points, they start working within that theme. So this is kind of the aesthetic. So speaking about like change and stuff, when I came on board with Oakley, a lot of the aesthetic language was very geometric, right? Flats and just, stretched out boxes and stuff. But one of the things I brought was the idea of accelerating curves. So for example, a circle is just a radius, right?
Yeah.
But you look at our logo, the logo, right, is an ellipse. And what it has is it has accelerating curves. So that means the curve starts to change. It gets tighter as it's going to the tip and starts opening up again. You look at these surfaces. These surfaces are all changing. There's accelerating curves and curvatures. Same here. So that language applied to these products was new, right? That was what started changing the language of Oakley at that time. And you can see in a lot of things. And again, throughout time, it changed again.
That's interesting to understand. So like you're saying, like you could go with a standard radius curve that is going to give you like a very circular thing. And this, you created your own design lines based off like how you described it, like with your own curvatures and your own
just
changing
the forms that I thought denoted speed and performance. And it's not like I invented that, it's just like taking those forms from other areas, like for example, auto racing, right? Race cars and things of the time are these beautiful, fluid and aerodynamic forms. Well, why wouldn't we do that here, right? Because you got athletes and people, traveling at high rates of speed on a bike, running, doing whatever. Why wouldn't you want what they wear to be aerodynamic?
Totally.
And again, this is in the 90s, right? So if you think about it today, Of course, right?
And I'm sure a lot of advancements in this tech came during that time from the 80s when it was like very rudimentary.
Oh yeah, this was like in the beginning of the world, the CADing things up, right? You guys have heard the term CAD, computer-aided designs. Everything's CADed up today. Back then, we were on the forefront.
Yeah.
Literally on the forefront.
That brings me to another point. I read that Oakley had the third ever 3D printer behind NASA. Is this true?
I can't tell you if it was behind NASA, but we definitely were one of the first in the West Coast, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And that was, again, due to Jim, I think, going to a trade show, seeing something and seeing this technology and thinking, okay, we got to figure out how to use this.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
smart. I mean, now you look at it's everywhere, right?
Oh yeah, now it's ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
But back then, it was like you're gambling again, right? You're taking a chance, speculating that this has some value. And so within that, my buddy Neil Houston, Oakley guy, took on the challenge of learning the software and working with the equipment and the software and using Alias, which is a software that back then it was just car studios using it.
Oh, wow.
And so we're bringing in, again, from a different industry,
having to rebuild it to fit what you guys are doing.
Trying to figure out how, if at all possible, right?
Yeah.
Today, people don't question it, but back then, it was a question mark.
Totally.
Right? So you've got that technology happening in the background. We've got, creative things thinking. And then your question is, where does the inspiration come from? And I said, the last place you look at is the same, right? So
adjacent products, you look at.
But for Oakley, because that watch is our first watch, the Pro M frame was a flagship piece. It made sense to use that as reference. But typically, for all the other things, I look at everything else, right? And I explain it this way, like it's just like you don't look at the thing you're creating as inspiration. The exact same reason why there are laws and reasons why you don't marry your cousin. It's just no bueno, right?
Yeah.
It's just a bad gene pool to go from, because you're not going to create something good and unique.
Yeah, incestuous design.
It happens, right?
Yeah, totally.
And maybe there's a place for it. But in terms of asking me how I do it, that's the route. I don't take that route, right? I'm looking at other things. You might look at a car, I'll look at a car, but I will also crawl underneath the car and look at the suspension and some of the other parts and bits and pieces that someone created.
I also look at that watch and the curves, and I see some nature. I guess I see like a skate or a stingray or something, right?
Sure.
That came to mind when I was looking at that watch, and I know you had said too, like you are a spear fisherman. I guess you like going in the ocean. Like, does that influence design? Were you doing it back then?
Yeah, I did. I wasn't doing it back then when I did some of these designs. That happens to be a relatively new passion. I've been doing it over a decade. But to your point about seeing a stingray, I think that's very appropriate. I wasn't necessarily thinking of a stingray, but I was thinking of things that are moving quickly, right? Forms that can sense through. And what you're describing is what's called biomimicry.
Okay.
Right. Biomimicry is looking at plant, animal, nature as inspiration, right? And bio being, life. We're mimicking that. So I can see, now that you say it, like, duh, I can see a stingray. They're beautiful and elegant in the water, and they can haul ass when they have to, right?
Yeah, totally.
So there's certainly that aspect. But
and it's like nature's created these things over millions and millions of years of evolution, so they perfected a lot of things, right?
Exactly. To be
everything.
To perform with the least amount of resistance, the highest amount of efficiency, typically, right? So there's a lot of really beautiful things from nature, certainly.
Yeah.
But
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess, what are some of your favorites? Like, what were some of the projects that you were most excited to work on? You said hundreds. I know it's probably hard to pick. And
it's way hard to pick. Each one has I have favorites for different things. So let's, I brought some watches. Probably, it's tough because with watches, I really enjoyed everything I did. But usually your first and your last have significance, right? So my first one would be Time Bomb, which a lot of people know, right? It's this one here. And my last watch with the program was 10 years later. They asked me if I would work on the watch again because my primary job was the eyewear.
Okay.
Right. So And I loved working on watches, to be honest, because it was a nice break from doing eyewear. It was a different, thought process and exercise and everything. So it was a nice break. And so my last watch was the Time Bomb 2. Not a big stretch for naming, but certainly the idea was to elevate, if you look at the two.
So these are 10 years apart, these two
These
watches.
are 10 years apart in development, right? They both have mechanical movements, meaning you don't need a battery. There is an internal battery, but you don't need to change that battery. Just your bodily motion powers a pendulum that cranks the little generator, so there's always powered. You can see it back here as it moves, right? And so the idea of
that will keep it powered. That little pendulum.
Think about it. As we walk,
it's going off.
It's going to keep going. It's a little tiny charge, wow. and it powers it, right? So, so the significance about this one is because this is the last watch I ever did for Oakley. It's kind of a big deal. So if I knew that, I wanted to make it special. At the same time, special means different, but it's an homage. 10th anniversary, so that means it has to pay homage. So there's got to be some similarity. That's a great challenge.
Yeah.
Right?
I imagine.
So I was like, all right, we're in it. So we roll up the sleeves and start iterating and thinking about taking this somewhat, it's an iconic shape now, but back then, just starting like, how do I evolve this? What can I do? So I came up with, it's a larger case design, right? Because over time, the acceptability of size has changed, right, from small watches to big watches. And, they're both still titanium, but we show the titanium in a different way. It's brushed. This has segments in the metal band that move. This also, but I wanted to improve it and offer another dimension of movement, because if you look at your wrist, it's not a perfect cylinder.
Yeah.
Right? We got bumps and bones and whatever. Well, this design can twist.
Ah.
So this
That's
design,
sort of like the exoskeleton design with the seam here.
Kind of like an armadillo, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah.
We go back to biomimicry, and this can conform to your wrist more ideally than this one can. So that's an improvement, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if Oakley and myself, if we're all about innovation, the definition of innovation is literally to make better. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't have to be some crazy, rocket ship or anything like that. It's just to make it better.
And better, that's an open term, but in all the ways, right? In any of the ways.
And I think for Oakley and for myself, that means to make it work better, feel better, be more comfortable, more durable, whatever, but always in the pursuit of making it better for someone, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the big things. And when I did that, it was an opportunity, because it all came together to show, this polymer spine, right? So you have this cool color, you've got these platelets, and then, this project was happening around the same time, either before or after our C6 project, which is a flagship frame, Oakley's most expensive eyewear, where we used like 80 laminate layers of carbon fiber, and we did some CNCing. So that was done to this. So this bezel here, this area around the face, is just basically this continuation of the case. But on this one, it is a separate piece.
And that glass you're talking about is this glass right here, right?
Yeah. This is C6. C6, by the way, is a periodic table element of carbon.
Okay.
So that's where the C6 comes, because
perfect.
this is all carbon fiber, almost all. The spine is actually beta titanium, and there's a couple other little bits, but primarily this is carbon fiber. So, and it articulates and does everything. So if you notice, this has this really cool articulation. Hey, this has this really cool articulation. You'll notice this has kind of an interesting diamond faceted icon.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? This has the same.
Oh, wow. And that one's so small and detailed.
So the idea was, this was kind of like, we did this little thing where these were part of this elite series.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't overly longly lived,
Yeah.
But that was the idea, that taking some of the advancements and developments from, a newer, innovative product, applying it to a more, at least 10-year evolved watch. That's where Time Bomb 2 kind of evolved, right? It's got a carbon face, and there's all this other stuff.
It's
very cool. And then you keep cohesion through the line, and things are working together. And, and you see here too, like, this internal skeleton looks really cool from the inside, and
you can see the little spring member there to keep it in tension so that this thing will stay closed. It doesn't flop around, right?
Totally.
Like a nice car door, right? You close a cheap car, it sounds like a cheap car. You close an expensive, European car perhaps, it sounds like quality. Yeah. Same idea. All those little senses that we get reinforces someone's notion if something is quality or not, right? Just like from an apparel standpoint, you touch it, you get the hand of it, like, oh, this is thin and crappy, or like, wow, feel that, it's got a nice hand, it's the right amount of softness or whatever else. It's all these little receptors we have of sense that build a picture of this is quality or not, on top of obviously our eyes. Right?
Yeah, and that's the difference of when you touch something and feel something. And it's interesting too, because you look at, I'm not really in design. I'm more in, say, marketing and things too, but it's a whole nother department at Oakley, that people that have to take your designs and then go and market it, right?
Sure.
And, there's probably a point where you're saying, Jim, you guys went through a transition together, and you're looking at, like, that's a $5,000 glass, you said, right? Was retail?
I think it was $4,000 or $5,000. Unfortunately, I can't quite remember.
Yeah, either way, it's a high ticket item, right? That's a high ticket item.
Yeah.
And probably back before you were there, like, there wasn't ever a high ticket item like that.
I don't believe there was something of that nature, because I don't think the brand was at a point where it could that could work.
That kind of product, yeah.
Well, yeah, that like your audience or your customers can accept that from you, right? Yeah. Yet, I think it took time for Oakley to build its reputation based on hard work and good product.
Improving itself
that, hey, you're going to spend a lot, but you're going to get the value out of it, right?
So that's kind of what I was going with that. Like, how do you transition that? And, like, you were there through that sort of transition where products did get to $5,000 or $4,000, right? Like, and was it like a slower transition? Like, we'll launch this next product that's going to cost this. And you had said off camera too, like, sometimes products will go over costing because you just design something, right? You just design something and you have no idea when it gets sent off to the factory. First of all, are they going to be able to execute, I guess, is the first question. Second of all, what's it going to cost them to produce this? And, like, I guess you probably don't even think about that if you've been given carte blanche to just be creative.
It depends, right? Like, so for example, the example you're talking about is, as we did the watch, working with some watch manufacturing partners, there are some things that we don't understand, like in terms of how much it costs for something. So we'll take that, we'll send that out and get that back, and we'll work with that. It's not always carte blanche on everything by any means, and a good designer needs to work within a budget. So with that, yes, some things will cost more than others, certainly, and you have to design appropriately and accordingly. And in the root of your question of, I think, what's the acceptability and how much of that for the customer, they got to really believe the brand. They have to believe in the brand enough to shell out that kind of money for something of value. And like I said, I think we built that at Oakley over time.
Yeah.
Right? With good product, good customer service, good warranties, and good product, and following it up with hopefully better product. Because, there's no such thing as perfection, but there is such a thing as constant improvement, right? Yeah. So,
I love that you say that. I'm a fan of that saying, of course.
Yeah, it's real. It's
and people chasing perfection, you'll be disappointed often.
Hey, speaking as a recovering perfectionist, I understand that, because that's what I would strive for. I would drive myself crazy, yeah, for sure. But you start working in the real world and working with a brand, working with customers, you bring in reality and a balance of practicality and perfection, right? So oftentimes, instead of perfection, we like to use the term, excellence. We want to strive for excellence and constantly improve. So, if I look at my products, that's happened too. The engineering of them, the look, the feel, all that. They've hopefully over time have improved. And, you take your learnings from each one and do that. But again, it took time for Oakley to build a reputation and a brand presence and I think a following that could accept something of that stature of price, whether it's 4,000 or 1,200 for a watch, or 400 or 300 for sunglasses, whatever. All of it was backed by the technology, by the effort, and the marketing of it. I think is part of the question. I think Oakley did a fantastic job marketing in the early days, and just like anything else, has evolved over time.
Yeah.
And something a lot of people may not know, which I think is super cool, is when I joined Oakley, even though it was kind of a medium-sized company, a lot of things were still done like a small startup. A lot of the photography of products. You know who was a photographer for
that?
The founder?
Yeah.
Jim Gennard. He's a damn good photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have a studio in the back.
Grab some sunnies, go out to the beach, and get some shots.
Mostly they were studio shots. We would have other photographers shooting at competitions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we'd have an athlete come in, put us up, go in the studio, and Jim would be taking the pictures, right? And we'd use them, and that'd be great. So it was, so my boss is someone who's creative and has an eye. So that makes it really, complimentary for everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, all this stuff, it just all relates, and the marketing that he did with imagery and athletes as influencers, right? We didn't use the word influencers back then, but that's what they were.
Yeah.
Athletes were really the influencers of sports performance products at the time, right? So that's kind of who our influencers were. And we would work with them and, get their feedback. Hey, how do you like this? Does this work? Does this not work? And we take the feedback, apply it either on the product that we're working or the next generation of products.
Totally. So it's product development and it's marketing all in one. Do you remember during your time, some of the athletes, did you get to meet them? Did they come to the offices?
Yeah, I've met a lot of athletes over time. Yeah, it's kind of crazy at different times in our history. And, I've always been, I'm not an idol worshiper. So, I've met really amazing people, and I would just have a conversation like this. And I think they appreciate that, right?
Totally.
They constantly get the starry-eyed thing. But I could be talking to Michael Jordan, hey man, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And we're just talking.
Did you talk to Michael Jordan?
Yeah, I did talk to Michael Jordan.
Nice.
Yeah, several times. Just different people from beach volleyball, Gabby Reese, NFL guys, Jerry Rice. I've met hockey players. I've been very fortunate. Basketball, Alonzo Mourning, and obviously Dennis Rodman. And I've met a lot of really amazing athletes and notable people that have worked with the brand, and they've all been really great people. And again, just treating them like normal people. Obviously, respect. But getting their input and working with them is really cool, right? It's one of those things I never thought I would do, right? If I've said this before, if I had to, I look at my career, my professional design career, if it was a movie, I would have never, and I can say it's probably like a movie, I could never have written the script for it prior to living it, because it far exceeded any expectation I would have had for my career, right? Because I'm just this dude that I want to make cool shit.
Yeah.
But then, I get to meet amazing people. I get to work with talented people. I've learned so much from everybody. I've, met these really famous people, and then people really appreciate my artwork. So it's crazy, that
that's awesome.
That's kind of happened.
And did you think this in being in it at times, or did you kind of just reflect as you got older that wow, I was a lucky guy, or I did it,
I think a little of both. I think at the time I felt lucky, but I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And now that the time has passed, certainly as I get older, reflecting back, dude, I am super proud. I am super blessed that I got to live that life. And, a lot of Oakley people that have come and gone, it's still kind of a family, right? Because the people that were with Oakley during the golden ages, all the Willy Wonka chocolate, that shit was real, right? So people are wow, it's amazing. They go other places and everyone says the same thing. They've never had an experience like that before.
Quick commercial break here. This podcast is brought to you by BidStitch and Easy, okay? If you guys want to check out the Easy app, we're starting to ramp up operations on there. Download it. Let's get this thing popping, okay?
So when I'm living it, and those 25 years were absolutely amazing. Been to places I never thought I'd be. doing things I never thought I'd do. But it felt so natural. Like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, totally.
This is why I'm here. This is why, like you were saying, there's a lot of things. Is it fate? Is it this? Is it hard work? Is it luck meets, skill? I don't know. But at least during my time, it felt like that's how it should be, right? Until it didn't. And so when you have that going, you're not really thinking about it too much. I'm just in the moment. Like I told you, man, I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm in the back making it for you guys and myself, right? We're just doing it. We're going. And the thing about that, is it's amazing, right? It was my life for the most part. Now, I do have a life outside of Oakley too. And thankfully, when I was at work, it was 200%. But when I left work, I left it at work, and I was, a dad and husband, and all that, and 100%.
Good for you. Because sometimes that's tough.
Super tough, super tough. So I'm very grateful that Jim and Oakley gave me that opportunity to live my life that way. And because and it's cool because people they start to know who I am now, but at the time, it's not, my name isn't on this stuff. It's it's out there for people to like or not like. Because of the, it's Oakley's product, you like it or don't like it. And, coincidentally and really flatteringly, a lot of things they like, I happen to get a chance to work on, so that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think you had kind of talked about this. There's like a difference between artists and designers. You are a designer, industrial designer, and, but there is art to it. Whether you want to say it or not, but I guess, and that is a testament to the things that you've designed, that have, people want to know your name. People want to know who designed these things. And there's enough of a relevance to it that lives on. So I just think that's very cool.
Yeah. First, thank you. There is some art to this for sure. But I think, I don't call myself an artist. I have a high respect for artists because, artists do create art, for different reasons, right? They create it because they either have to, they want to get it out there, they want to make the world more beautiful, they want to express an idea, a thought. There's many different reasons, but they do it for them. They are their own customer, so to speak, right? Like they're going to create it. But, industrial design and many of the other professional design professions, I don't necessarily design it for myself. Right, yeah. I'm working for a client, so to speak. In the case of this stuff is all for Oakley, but you know what? I'm Oakley too. I am the client, right? So that's kind of that's a little different.
That goes back to having that time in Oakley be magical because that's the perfect mixture in the pot, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And not everyone gets a chance. Not everyone's clients are totally aligned with the designer's thinking, right, or their values. Not always, right? Like a good designer is going to create what's right for that client and what their brand stands for.
Did you guys ever, can you remember back that time and like, did Oakley have a distinctive set of core values that you guys were guided by?
For a long time, we always did. A lot of it was not written down. A lot of it was like tribal knowledge.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like if you were like legit OG Oakley, you knew it, right? And you would in all your best abilities never cross certain lines and anything like that. I think later as it grew, they built a lot of effort was built internally on like a manifesto, kind of thing, so that it's easily adopted for people that don't have as much time with the brand. It might be new to them, right? So, yeah, I think the core values are still there, as they built it.
Yeah.
And
but it evolved. Can you verbalize like maybe what that was, or is that even?
As an old timer, it's hard to be honest with you to verbalize it. But in my words, my view, this is not necessarily their company line because again, I'm not with Oakley. So, but my view is to be original. A lot of the things that I believed in, that I learned from Jim, is we always want to be original. So therefore, there's no need to look at other stuff for me. That's eyewear and watches. We want to stand out, right? and that means to be unique, original. We want to be brave. And again, to be brave involves risk.
Yeah.
Which is very counterintuitive to running a business. And we want to be based in performance. So there needs to be a functional reason to make something, right? So it's performance. And then all that's also wrapped in a sincere passion to strive for excellence, right? And I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of, very Oakley-isms.
Yeah, for sure. But
for sure.
That
But
sounds pretty good to me.
I'm just trying to give you kind of the basics of what I take away from my time there and what I've tried to emulate going forward when the moment's right to create things of that nature. And, it has served me well, and I feel it's a good, worthy cause. And if we look back at Oakley's history, if that was some of the guiding principles and the products are as a result of that, and all the knockoffs and everything else that have happened because of it, it obviously works, right? It's inspiring other people, or they want some of that specialness. They may not know how to create it, and that's fine, right? But they want it and they want to emulate it. Okay, there you go. But doing special, unique, beautifully performing products is not easy.
I would imagine.
By any stretch.
That's a good segue here. How would you, as time goes on, as more designs are made, it's like music. It's like harder to make an original piece of music. It's harder to make an original piece of clothes. As we look back over history, so much has been done. Everything's been done. Mm-hmm. Obviously, not everything's been done, but a lot's been done. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice to people who say would want to be in design, and like how you go about creating original works of design?
Sure. Well, like the things I've shared with you already. Let's say if it's an apparel, try if you've been doing it the same way, consider doing it a different way, right? Because the definition of sanity is doing things the same way and expecting a different result.
Yeah, exactly. I love
so
that too.
if you don't like what you've been creating, the way you've been creating it, maybe you can glean some of the things I've said, and like instead of looking at other garments as inspiration, if let's say you're in apparel, look at other things completely not garment related or loosely related, or look at something else, and as inspiration. Look at either adjacent or completely different industries, technologies. Look at inspiration that you try your best to find something unique that no one's used as inspiration. That's what I'm saying. It's not easy, right? It's a constant search, which is the fun part.
Yeah.
Right. You're like an explorer discovering new land, which same thing. It's hard to find new land now.
Yeah.
Right. So same thing. I agree with you. It's hard to do new designs, but I will tell you that's what people said to me when I started.
Yeah.
Sunglasses.
Which is a great point.
Sunglasses and eyewear has been done for hundreds of years. I'm like, all right. In the back of my head, remember, I'm like this young snot-nosed kid. I'm in the back of my head thinking, yeah, so what? I didn't do it.
Yeah,
that wasn't my time.
It's not my spin.
Let me try to do some stuff, and I can say, certainly it's not just me and the team. I think we created some very unique things in an industry that has been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Right. And I do agree with you, though. It is harder and harder.
It's harder, but I think you're right. I think having that it's harder mindset doesn't get you anywhere. The mindset is to just go and explore and get inspired. And when you think about being inspired, it's like it's a spark in your brain. It's seeing something that triggers a thought pattern or a design idea, or just being out. For me, when I look at my business and what's helped us the most over the years is like traveling and seeing what is happening in different areas and what people are up to, and seeing different cultures. And that has always, whenever I've come back from that, I've been reinvigorated and inspired to do something different,
Yeah, absolutely. It's getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of the box. I mean, I think, and that's part of the fun and adventure and reward, right? Like, you want to be known as a designer that just created something that's kind of nice. Okay, that's cool. You want to be known as a designer that created something totally different and new.
Yeah.
Which one? I mean, you're not a designer. You told me that.
No,
Which one do you want to be?
Yeah.
The latter, right?
Totally.
So if that's what you want, it only makes sense to do what the activities that will get you that result. And that's not doing it the regular way that other people do it, right? Yeah. And so that's how it is for me. And, it's, as a parent, it's interesting. I notice my son's that way too. Like, stuff he doesn't care about, he doesn't try. Stuff he cares about, man, this kid's good. Right? Like, holy shit. And so I guess, I like to take some credit that he probably gets that from me. The things that I enjoy, I really go after and try to understand it and evolve it and innovate in it myself, right? Like you mentioned spearfishing. I have done it for over a decade, not as long as a lot of other old timers. But at the same time, trying to do the best I can, right? To evolve and learn every aspect of it and the beauty of all the things involved, from finding, catching, cooking, sharing, all that stuff, right? Same with design, understand it. Figure out be on. Here's the other thing. Be honest with yourself too. Are you just copying somebody else's stuff?
Yeah.
Be honest. You don't have to admit it to anybody, but ask yourself that question. And if you are you okay with that? I mean, if you're okay with it, you're okay with it. I mean, I'm not one to judge. All I can tell you is I'm not okay with that, right? Yeah. And if I was okay with that, I guarantee you wouldn't ask me on this show.
That's such a good point also, because in our business, in our world of vintage, there's a lot of copying, straight up. There's a lot of copying, and there's a lot of and I'm a proponent of it through my time, because I also do production for certain things and done some things, and you know there's that fine line between what people call copying and inspiration, and I mean, everybody has their own moral compass or their own level of what they accept for their own life, And,
absolutely, and like I said, I can't judge everybody by any means. I mean, I'm only judging myself, but I do believe that there are definitely different levels of paying homage and copying, right? There's different degrees of that. And to your own point, your own moral compass, where you feel comfortable. And I think the trick, again, this is a great challenge for anybody that's listening that is doing this, is give yourself that challenge. How do you pay homage in such a way that's creative and doesn't copy? Right, that's a good little like mission statement, right? Like, how am I going to do that?
Yeah.
Do I take an old, I can't think of an old brand, but like when I was in high school, like whether it's a Hang Ten or it's a Pacific Sun T-shirt or something. Well, how do you take the style of that and make a new thing, but with that style, and everyone can look at it and say, "Dude, that's totally from that time and period. I love it." To me, that's like a worthy cause, right?
Because you have to look too. Like, a shirt is a shirt. You can put buttons on it. Put a collar on it, no collar, but a shirt is a shirt. You know what I mean? We're not going to reinvent. I mean, you can reinvent a shirt somehow.
You can.
You could. You totally could. You could make it so that there's different sort of, I don't know, it could be a dress on the top of your body. Who knows what it could be?
It could be. You could. I
guess you're right. Yeah.
You can do. See, again, when you open your mind to thinking about the word innovation, like when you started your sentence, you just defaulted.
I already had a preconceived notion of a shirt's a shirt.
But then as we talked about it, you start thinking, well, wait a minute. A shirt's not just a shirt.
Yeah.
Right? Like the shirt I'm wearing, it's a t-shirt, but this is like a performance, moisture wicking, it's airy, it's comfortable, it's more comfortable than a regular t-shirt for me. Okay, I like it. It's comfortable, right?
Yeah.
You have it more form-fitting, you have it looser, whatever. So there's a crap ton of stuff you can do. You can make a t-shirt last forever. You could, whatever, right? So you can choose the path you want to take. And that's my point is decide how do you want to be known? The works of art or the products you make, how do you want them to be perceived?
Yeah.
You want to be Me Too? And that's fine. But don't expect the same kind of accolades a Me Too designer or person is going to get versus a revolutionary designer.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, right? And don't expect to do revolutionary stuff by doing it very conventionally.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of going back to, you have to be, if you're going to do revolutionary stuff, brave. You have to be brave. You have to be willing that maybe this isn't going to be accepted by the people. Maybe this will be something that causes a stir in the world, but no one ever wears it. There's like different levels to it because you just are doing it for the design. You're doing it because it's something you wanted to do, something you wanted to see in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your runway analogy, is really relevant, right? Like some of the things you see is like, holy smokes, what the hell is going on?
No one's going to wear that.
You can't. How are you going to wear that? You took 15 people to get that on that person, right?
Yeah, totally.
But the point is they're drawing attention, right? They want attention maybe to a particular theme that they will release as something more conventional that you can wear. But, there is that balance of something that is shock and awe
Yeah.
versus something that's very usable, right? And in today's world, I feel like everyone, with our economy and different things happening, and whether the scarcity or the abundance of money, it's a universal that people, they go after value, right? It could be expensive value, but it could be very affordable value. But it's got to have value, meaning it's got to be worth what you're going to pay for it, and that's tangible. Whether it's again like my apparel, how does it feel? How does it last? How does it look? All those little things add up to, is this worth it or not? And will I buy another one, or will I come back? Right?
Yeah.
So, I think for anybody creating out there, it's really important to, before you get crazy, stop and think about, what do you want to achieve? What do you want your designs or artwork, what do you want it to be? And when I say that, I would give you a different way to think about it. What emotion do you want your customers to feel when they look at it, when they touch it, when they feel it? And if you can answer that, then you can put the effort into, okay, how do I put that emotion into what I'm doing? Yeah. Which is how I design. Like, I want people to look at the stuff and get like the feeling of romance, sex appeal, yearning, desire. That's what I want, right? People when they see the thing, or it could be like, oh wow, that's really technical. That's really precise. That's, again, it'll vary depending on what it's for. And when I do that, that's what's in my mind as I'm creating, right? Yeah. Not this other model somebody else did. Oh yeah, that's kind of cool. Well, I want it like that, but different. That it might work, but you're not gonna likely get the true result versus trying to describe the feeling you want someone to have.
Okay, so let's talk about the feeling people get when they see the over the top.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think it is?
Okay, well, over the top is Jim's brainchild.
Yeah.
And I think it is a brand design, Oakley design flex.
Okay.
In today's vernacular.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate.
Right.
Never thought about it in that term, but.
And as such, it's designed to get attention. It's designed to show people that we thought differently back then. Oakley does things differently, right? But rooted in performance. It works.
Yeah.
Right? So you want the customer to say, who does that? Oakley does that. Of course they do that.
I tried it on before. It works great with a bald head, by the way.
It does work great with a bald head. It absolutely does.
And I look at this and I think like, definitely Brave is, as we talked about that a lot, but like, Mad Max tech, but like, apocalyptic, I guess.
Sure.
Also,
absolutely, yeah.
And also, I guess too, when you think about it, like, it reflects the brand, it reflects the bravery of the brand, 100%, but also reflects the bravery of the wearer, very much so, because you're like, okay, this guy is out there, he's doing it, he's not scared.
I told you, it's your front row guy.
Yeah.
It's not, this was not even second or third row. This is your front row person, okay? Yeah. And again, I think in society,
the hit on the back.
Yeah, I think in society we like heroes, generally speaking. We also like underdogs, right? So there's kind of this dichotomy there that this is kind of trying to do too. It's for the underdog, it's for the bold, the brave. You said brave, okay? Yeah, the design is brave, but it is for the brave.
Exactly, that's what.
And who doesn't want to be known as brave?
Yeah,
we're not all brave. We're not all brave, but we all want to be known as brave, right?
Yeah.
And that represents that feeling, that emotion, right? And you gotta have a brass pair to be able to walk around with those. I don't wear those, so obviously I don't have a brass pair. But it is a beautiful piece that did its job. And you think about it from a brand standpoint. We talked about the runway models. That's kind of like that in a sense. It's wearable. I don't need 15 people to help me put it on, but it's more wearable than those extreme fashion, pieces, right? And, I would tell you, I think, when we did it, it'd be great, the part of the thought, it'd be great if we could sell enough and just, pay for the tooling and all the work that went into it. But at some point later on, we found out, someone looked it up and like, wow, we sold way more than we thought.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I was going to ask that because you said you kind of weren't always privy to the numbers, but yeah, like, I would imagine this would be a lower, I'm sure it wasn't as crazy as some of them, but obviously higher than you guys had projected, eh?
Yeah, it was higher than we thought. Just like we guys were talking about, how many we saw? I don't know, dude. How many could? I looked it up. Oh my god, and I want to. So I could be completely off on the numbers. So I get privy to the numbers. I forget them because they're not that relevant to me. Yeah. There could have been anywhere from 10 to 20,000 of these made, right? And so it's more than paid for the tooling, more than paid for anything else. But more than anything,
a major marketing moment,
more than anything. Think about it. The money they invested to make it is way less than we would have ever paid to have global recognition for any kind of product we want to market.
Yeah.
Because I believe most people on planet Earth know this design for Oakley. If you describe it, they may not know the name over the top or whatever, but you describe it.
I've seen so-and-so wear that, or I've seen that on a picture. Yeah. And there's still pictures circulating around of this glass. I remember seeing it on a few people back in the day. Like I said, I was snowboard world, ski world, extreme sports world, surf world, and I remember seeing this on quite a few pro skiers back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely remember.
I think Glenn Plake would do this well with his mohawk back in the day. I don't remember if he wore this one. It might have been, but yeah, it definitely.
I feel like somebody wore this during the Olympics, maybe.
Yeah.
Like a Heike Sorsa, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I have this vision of him wearing this during the Olympics, like one of the earlier snowboard Olympics.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the athlete, but certainly it was worn in the Olympics in competition, which is nuts, right?
Because in those early days of snowboarding in the Olympics, it only came in the Olympics in '98. I remember a lot of people were against it, a lot of people were for it, and then there was the people who went that were like, "We're going to show how crazy snowboarding is and the personality behind it." And I feel like that's
certainly the personalities were big, right, for athletes then, and so that's a great project. I will want to say that on this one, Jim was actually working with one of our other designers originally on this, and so they got to a point, and then it just wasn't moving, and then Jim asked me to jump in and take over. So it was at that point I came in and worked with Jim and did a bit of an overhaul. And so that's the piece we have here, so,
very cool.
I just want to make sure, like, again,
Jim gets credit. He's the idea.
Oh yeah. Oh dude, he's like the mad scientist, right? Cause that's a term it's gotten used with Oakley. And, I'm on the mad science team, right? Like a bunch of mad scientists running around.
That's funny. It's a funny way to put it. Like I said, I do have a company where we do production. We take old clothing and we resell them into new clothing. So I have a designer and a creative director, and we do, I come in like a crazy man sometimes with ideas, right? Yeah. And sometimes that can stress people out because I come and they're like, we're working on this. Now you're telling us that this idea has to happen or whatever. Like, was there a level of that, or were you guys all kind of like when Jim came in with a wild idea, it was like everyone's fired up?
Dude, absolutely times 10.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, what you're doing is good. You keep them on their toes. You're changing. You're out in the public and interacting. So you've got your finger on the pulse of what's happening or what you believe is going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's important. And Jim played that role too, right? Because he wasn't necessarily on the day to day. Give him updates or whatever, and he might come in with an idea. Sometimes like, holy whoa, that's crazy cool, and sometimes like, whoa, what are you talking about, dude? And it would be a full range, but the great thing about it would get you thinking differently. It would get you outside of your box. And a lot of that effort and energy would ultimately create something new, right?
Yeah.
And then we got a lot of professionals that are good, and then we can make that new better and really work. So yes, to your question, Jim definitely did that. Would come in with different inspirations or things that he thought were cool and give it to us. Okay, got it. Take that and run with it. And like, for example, I didn't bring one. I can't believe I didn't bring one. Oh, wait, maybe I did. I thought I put it in my case. I have an X medal. I think I didn't open it or I left it on a table. But Jim brought in an inspiration for that design that I think a lot of people don't know. It was a door handle from, I believe, a Porsche 911. I can't remember what year. It was a vintage car.
You literally brought the door handle in.
Yeah, the door handle. And like, so that's not uncommon for us to do. Like, let's just get all kinds of stuff.
You'd have like industrial bits around the office.
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
Dude, yes, that's for sure. And and again, a 911, right, is this German engineering, and it's beautiful. It's been refined over time, right, to perform better and better and better. So I think there's a lot of correlation with that, and the beautiful sculpture in the handle, translates into the car body and everything else. So I think some of that motivation, that inspiration, was put into experimental, along with the language that we were already following. So that's one, there as inspiration. Again, that is not a sunglass. That is not inspiration of a sunglass, right? If it was, it wouldn't look the way it looked.
Totally.
So it's just another illustration of doing things differently to get a different result.
Yeah. Inspiration is everywhere. You just gotta be open to it and
Let it come on in.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about this guy. This is the blade.
Yeah.
which I personally like. Dylan behind the camera there really likes. Obviously you have, it looks like the rotary of like a skill saw or a rotary saw. And this one is non-symmetrical, which I guess it is symmetrical too, but reverse. Like a mirror. Not a mirror perfect, but it's like a reverse mirror.
So I think we could agree that it's not necessarily symmetrical.
Yeah.
It has symmetrical qualities, but it's not symmetrical.
Yeah. But it's just very cool. And, do you want to talk about the design of this guy?
Sure. So on my own, one of my hobbies in the past was making furniture and making stuff, right? And deal with saws. And I always thought the saw blade was really a beautiful individual piece of its own, right? That it's a utilitarian thing that cuts, and it just does these amazing things. And I just thought it was beautiful. And if you look at a saw blade, the more contemporary saw blades have anti-kick geometry to it. So it's not just like a claw, right? It's got some other features. So that was inspiring me to create this. So the silhouette that you see here, like this would be the teeth that cut. There's this little ramp up here. That's inspired from the saw blade as a kick up. It's a feature so that the piece you're cutting doesn't kick back at you, right?
No way.
At any rate, using that as
crazy to me that you went that in depth with that detail. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least that's how I saw it, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so that was part of it. And so I always thought that as a shape, and for a watch, it made sense, right? You've got a dial, analog dial going around, round. I'm thinking, what is a round, beautiful shape that potentially makes sense or could work for this? And I just thought, a blade is really cool, right? And also thinking razor blade, as one of Oakley's products, one of the first ones I got involved with. It made a lot of sense to me, so I started playing around with that idea and contrasting it to highlight it, because I want deep cuts. But we still need room for stuff. And then the idea of how to spin it off so that the links were asymmetrical, as they are. They're mirrored to one another. And at the same time, this was also designed, I purposely put rubber in here because this is a metal bracelet, but it's also designed to handle a rubber bracelet. And the rubber one, I don't have one here, it'd be a good example, but you would see the visual, that black would come in here, and then you'd see it continue and come back out. And it would look intentional and purposeful, and a completely different aesthetic. And it was actually designed that way.
Wow.
So that's one of the things about this watch I really like a lot, is just the design, how it works so well. I mean, if you change it, it would look like it was only designed for the rubber band. And if you put this on, it looks like it's only designed for the metal band.
So the rubber band you could see through the outer, or it just had the rubber band?
So all this metal linkage here is gone.
Okay.
And just imagine black
I see.
band.
Okay.
But the black band would start inset from this edge. So just like, see, this rubber is not all the way to the edge, it's slightly in. The band starts slightly in. So your eye would follow the black around and through.
I see, yeah.
Right?
Beautiful.
So, again, sorry, I didn't bring that, but...
no, that's fine.
That explains one of the things about it.
The arms on it look like medieval fighting blades.
Yep. This thing is all about being deadly without hurting anybody. So if you look at the hour markers are almost a reverse blade. So if you can see the hour marker, it's like a ring, but now instead of the teeth on the outside, like a conventional saw blade, they're on the inside. So if that was spinning, you would cut yourself on the inside. So each one of those represents the hour, right? And then the hands are also asymmetrical, and those are kind of a stylized tine. A tine is a cut portion of the saw blade, a tine or knife. You can call it a knife. That's what those are. So all of that thematically is to reinforce the concept of a saw blade, as well as the graphic on the back.
Yeah, the graphic on the back. Black is a saw blade. I would imagine designing watches is quite complex because you're obviously not going to design the interworkings of the motor and things, but you're going to design how the band works with itself, and that's all done in like your CADing, right? Like you're literally designing the movements and everything. So
there are certainly designers, just watch designers, that they will design a lot of the internals. Okay. Not necessarily every single gear, but there's like, it's like an engine, right? There's some parts of the engine you have to accept, and some parts you can modify. So there's some flexibility in designing a movement. And then there's the case or the chassis of a car that holds the engine, case that holds the movement here, right? So my thing is for these is I'm designing the chassis. We picked a movement. Now more sophisticated watches and other high-end watches, they start with deciding on the right movement for different reasons, and there's huge levels of differences in those. And then some of those can be customized as well. So there's a full depth. We didn't do that at Oakley. Remember, this is not the main business. The main business is eyewear. So we go to those depths on the eyewear. We didn't do that on the watches. So really, my work is mostly the case designs, the bands, the face, all that. I certainly have a respect for the deeper dive into it. But honestly, too, as a designer, we may have talked about this, like, I think one of my superpowers in doing what I do is the lack of knowledge that I have. I have a lot of knowledge on a lot of things, but when I'm designing something, I don't want to understand too much about it, because if I do, those little laws of physics or whatever in my head will prevent me from trying something brave and daring, right? So let's say on the watch, I work with very talented engineers in a team so that I don't want to think about it, certain things. Yeah. Even though I know about it, I try to like subdue that and just go crazy and then work with them. Like, okay, now we get real and do whatever. So it's important to have this back and forth, I believe, when you're creating something technical, right? But you want to be creative. So, there's this kind of this battle is a little bit extreme, but you could call it a battle between, like an engineer's got to be, strong and robust and safe. Designer might want it whimsical and whatever, and it goes back and forth till you find a good middle ground that achieves both. Yeah. Right. So on these designs, typically they weren't whimsical, first off, but in these designs, great team. So most of what happened could happen, but I learned things. Okay, we can't do that, but if we do that, we have to do this. So it's it's all compromise. Yeah, no, I've seen that in my own business as well, where the design gets hindered by our knowledge of what's possible, or knowledge of what we have access to, or knowledge of maybe just what we know of the past experiences, instead of just designing from a place of complete creativity without letting our own brains limit our potential, right? Mm-hmm. And I've had these talks with my team, very similar to that, and just been like, let's go out and design something and forget about all the limitations that we know could be there, and see where that goes, and and that's something I did while I was at Oakley too. Created this kind of like this little program to really dive into creativity, right? Because at one point my team was getting kind of bogged down with doing so much work, and not always the most, like, if you're doing a bunch of not flagship stuff, but you're doing a lot of stuff in the middle, right, it can be a little monotonous in volume, and as Oakley grew and everything, there's different dynamics. So to keep everyone creative and interested and motivated, started doing this project where it was volunteer at first. All the designers could do it, but it had to be on top of their regular work, right? At first, you do it after hours or whatever. And I cordoned off a room, put a security on the door so that only designers could get in there, inside the design department. So there's already a design department that not everyone's allowed, but there's engineers and all kinds of other people in there. But even in there was a room that only the designers could go into. Yes. And that room, put up stuff on the wall so you can just put drawings there. And that's where, the edict was, I want stuff in that we're creating, only the things on the wall that we can't make today. Whether it's 5, 10, whatever years, right? We can pick that. But I don't want any conventional thinking in there. And we don't use the word no in there. And it was all experimental, right? And it was a, I'm not really sure what the objective was other than, I need a creative outlet for everybody. Let's make it fun. Let's make it interesting. Let's see what comes of it.
Yeah. And also, like, when I hear you talk about it, the objective to me is to keep people interested in their jobs and keep people inspired to be doing this mission for Oakley, because that's a huge thing. And if you get bogged down in the day-to-day where potentially a lot of that mid-level stuff isn't very creative per se for everyone individually, you need, these people are creatives and they need to have that. It's personal fulfillment, right?
Yep. And you can get everybody can get burned out, and it sucks, right? I've been burned out before. And so it became something that evolved and, started inviting some people in, like some engineers talking, and set some ground rules. And from it, all these great creative things happened. And we actually had a project come out of it that became a huge, commercial success, right?
Wow,
and so
great.
now it's become, it's become part of the program, right? It went from extra work to like 10% of the work to whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it became, it started getting called something because that's just what I put on the calendar when we met. Like, we would meet once a week or so and go over stuff. And it was titled Advanced Concept Review. Right? That's just what it's Advanced Concept Review. We're gonna go over it, right? It's usually after hours and stuff. And so it's ACR for short.
Yeah.
And then that's just what we ended up calling it.
No,
right?
that's
Just
awesome.
ACR. And again, I'm not there now, so I don't know if it's exactly going on. But when I left, it was still a great process to free your mind, of the constraints that we all have. And what I was going to say with your idea, which is exactly the same, is what's important though. You have to have your staff give them what's the objective though, because if they're thinking, okay, I want to free my mind of constraints, but ultimately Drew wants us to sell this thing, that's going to constrain them, right?
Totally.
So you have to set it up so that it might sell, but that can't be the objective. Because if it sells, they're automatically going to tie it to what they know has sold.
Yeah. So okay, interesting. Yeah, see, and we actually did it for a while, and then we ended up stopping because we're like, it was costing a ton of money that we didn't have at the time.
Well,
so
you have to prove it out.
Yeah, and I think too, there's a level of what you're saying where like we started it as like a program, a small program that we were going to produce product. And what I hear from you're saying like maybe it wasn't with the objective to make a product. It was just to like hear what everybody had to say, get some ideas out, be creative. Maybe that's where we need to go with it so we can be more free with it, and then make other decisions based on that if we decide to on a separate.
Yeah, there could be some very tangible things that come out of it. Maybe inkling here, detail, whatever, right? It surpassed my expectation. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I invented this stuff, right? Like Google's been doing this, other companies do this, right? Where they allow creative time.
And it's culture building, right?
It's culture building.
You look at how successful companies are run now, it's super important to have your team be fulfilled. And that's a big part of it, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. I mean, we all talk about culture, right? We've got pop culture. We've got, the whole culture, the vintage as a culture and everything.
Of course, yeah.
It was the same at Oakley, during my time. We talked about the culture and, always people are afraid we're losing the culture and things like that, which can happen very easily.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Especially when you grow and or you change hands of ownership or whatever. So culture is something that is important, my belief, is important to build correctly with the right objectives to help a brand both be sustainable. And remember, I got into design to be fun, to keep it fun, right? Because if it's fun, for me, there's a good chance I'll do my best work.
Yeah.
Right? If it ain't fun, all right, I'll give you something. It'll be nice. Will it be my best?
Do you have any, like, would you say that your design department, one of my things on here to talk about was how you sort of eventually led the design team, right? You were like the head of design. We've kind of already talked about that, but would you say like your design department had its own culture, and then the whole company had its own culture, and each department had different cultures, or was the culture pretty cohesive? You guys all worked together, marketing, design, sales, everything?
Well, ideally, I'd like to say yes, but realistically, so during my time, the culture changed, right? So I'm going to talk about probably more the heyday of what I would consider.
And what years were those to you?
Let me think. I got to go back in time. Let's see if that was. I would say from up to like 2010-ish.
Okay.
Even after 2010, maybe up to the early teens, right?
Okay.
Of the 2000s. And the way I ran the team, the way I ran the design department, I think echoed how the rest of the company was trying to work. With freedom, respect, and everything. But realistically, you can't always run it that way with things like production, right? Where you have to, punch a clock and make things. But we tried to communicate really well and be open to ideas. And that's the thing. Everybody's got good ideas. And if you're just, too elitist to think only your small group is going to come up with good ideas, you're missing out, right? So having a design department with mixed disciplines of engineers, designers, modelers, all kinds of stuff, and we put things on the wall and you get different reactions and different discussions, man, there's some magic that happens that you would not expect, right? That's why I dig your space out here. It's just, it's open. There's a lot of probably collaboration that happens.
Yeah, good energy here. Everyone's motivated.
Absolutely, whether intentional or accidental, right?
Yeah.
Now, I will say that at the same time, I also protected my designers and stuff because I don't want everyone bugging them all the time, right?
That's like the enemy of creativity and productivity.
Yeah, so there's a fine balance between all those things. But I will say that my main primer is still true that I did. It just was relative to who we're talking about, is try to create the optimal, the best environment so my team, the different disciplines can do their best work. So the designers gave them a nice space. We redid the department. They had a little lounge area with boards up so they can have conversations and creative discussions. We'd have once a week. No one else is allowed. It's just us, just the creative team. And then we pull people in for different discussions. They have their space. And I put up a glass wall between them and the rest of their group. And oftentimes the doors are open. But when those are closed, leave them the fuck alone. Don't come and ask them for this or ask them for that. Because when you're creating, just like in sport, when you're an athlete or you're creative, when you're in the zone.
Yeah, we call it the flow state. Have you read about this?
I have. Yeah. When you're in the flow state, first off, it's not easy for people to get in the flow state.
No, it's not.
When you're in it, you can be so productive. The work is amazing. So because I was the leader for the group of people that I did that job for, I know what works and what doesn't work. I could have done the job for a lot of the people in there because I did at one point in time, right? So I understand, I believe I understood what they need to be successful. So I try to give it to them to the best of my effort. Not always successful, but if I can do that, then everyone's doing their jobs as well and communicating. Because the designers can't be completely cordoned off because how are they going to communicate with anybody? How are we going to get the synergy, right? Yeah. But at the same time, they can't be accessible to everybody all the time.
Yeah,
because then they can't get jack shit done.
Structure
right?
to it that has to work. Yeah.
So that's kind of some of what happened. So, and maybe because they were my people, I was a designer and want to protect them too, right? So they have their space. And at the same time, I have an office, but my door is almost always open. And the only time it's closed is someone wants to talk to me in private, right? So that's open. So I'm available to people. And the rest of the group, engineer, try to give them, the equipment, the space, what they need to work. But also their leaders are in that room too, right? Directors and stuff. So I respect those guys. And what do you want for your guys? What can I do to help, right? Yeah. They don't report to me. but I'm responsible for this room and this
You'd
group.
probably also
right?
have like your higher level management meetings where you'd meet with them too, or was that?
Yeah, we'd all meet at different times and different things, and
Yeah.
it can be it's very casual. It could be like this, like we come in like, hey dude, this is a problem I have, or whatever. Like, okay, well, what do you know, how do you think you want to pursue it, or do you want to know what I think, right? Whatever. So it's very casual. I think it all rooted in what makes the most sense, right? Like, okay, well, I think this would be cool for your team, but really it's your team. What do you want to do? Oh, okay, well, I want to do that. Okay, cool, man.
I had another question here, which ties into this culture thing as well. Like, you're talking the heyday, which was like, say, 2000 or late 90s.
This is for me.
This is for you.
My perspective.
Yeah,
right?
everything said on this podcast is your perspective of how things were for you and your time there, of course. But I'm sure, too, there was like, that period was reflecting on some of the most innovative designs, and also probably like some big bell curves on revenue during that period too for the whole company, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, we look at culture, we look at like having this company grow and everything, and I know tying it back into like a lot of Oakley products were for those people that wanted to stand out, and I know the company was looking to stand out as well. But also during extreme sports in that time, like there was a lot of partying, right? Like, and I know these companies, like I know I used to go to trade shows and things for snowboarding, and there was a big time to party. And I know Oakley probably threw some crazy parties and like would take you guys on trips and different things like that. Like, was it like that? I don't actually know. This is just a question.
Yeah. There were some cool parties both in the facility, the building, and the surroundings and other areas. There were some cool parties and stuff for sure. Yeah. And so I participated in that. It was really fun, to get the vibe, how people just really love the brand. It was just another way of showing love for the brand.
And
right?
probably at that point, they would bring, for certain ones, they'd bring the athletes and the teams in.
Yeah. Sometimes there was almost always professional athletes or something. Because here's the thing too, like that I really respect out of Oakley. And there's many brands that do this too, but a lot of the staff were former athletes too, like in marketing.
Yeah, because that's how kind of the industry works. You like if you end up you can't do it anymore, you want to find a job in the industry that right?
Yeah. So a lot of the sports marketing guys, they're former professional athletes, right? So they got friends and connections. And in the early days of Oakley, right, it was that way. It was your connections. It was your relationships. It was your friends and buddies, like. And I think Oakley would look bigger than it actually was because of that. So, for example, right, like I heard these stories before, and then some that I was part of that, like Jim would say, or I've heard from other people that in the early years, Oakley would get called and people want to buy like fairings and bumper things and whatever else for motocross because they saw Oakley logos all over the stuff. They thought Oakley made it.
But I did read Jim started with handlebars for motorbikes or BMX or something?
Close.
Okay.
Grips,
yeah, okay.
Yes, we made grips, but we didn't make the fairings. We didn't make the this and that. All the other things on the bike that people liked the logos on. They wanted all that stuff, right? So yes, he started motocross with that. So that happened, and then but it's all through athletes wanting to wear this stuff because in the beginning, we can't pay the big athletes. When you're a small company, relatively speaking, right? And like for example, one thing I always remember back at this is a while ago because I'm sure it's much more expensive now, but like F1 racing, F1 cars, right? Fastest racing on the planet, blah blah blah, globally known, international thing. The side view mirrors on those cars. Back then, I believe each mirror in terms of like marketing real estate is like $100,000.
Okay, wow.
Something like that.
That's crazy. Oh, like for logos, yeah. Wow.
Back then.
Yeah, jeez.
And then, hey, we got our logos on that F1 car and that F1 car. And I find out we didn't pay for those.
No way.
You look at the team, the whole team's kitted though. They all got eyewear and stuff. We also, the team, built special fireproof shoes and stuff for the pit crew and everything. So the money was spent a different way. So that they leverage what we're making.
Yeah, it's like
take care of the crew.
Totally.
Versus pay for some of these spots. And there's plenty of examples like that.
They need to have.
Absolutely.
So we don't have to pay.
And work with them so it's actually better.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of examples like that. based on relationships, working with the right people, and that's true today, right? Startups trying to get, some influencer or somebody to, hey, just do me a favor, blah, blah, blah.
But also, like, if a brand is so popular, the influencers will say, listen, send me a free package and I'm happy to do this because I want your stuff so bad.
Yeah, there was a lot of professional athletes wearing Oakley product. They weren't getting paid, but they wanted the best stuff because literally it was the best stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want the best stuff as an athlete, which who doesn't, but you don't quite, maybe you're not at that level where you can get free stuff or like paid endorsements, but you still want the free stuff. You might ask and you'll get the free stuff because you're of that level, because they didn't give it to everybody. I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay for it. If you want it, that's great. But the, kind of that grassroots, kind of thing, up and coming people, you want them to, do well in your product. Sure, yeah, wear it, and then they wear it, they perform, and they become loyal to the brand becomes loyal with them. We grow up together and good things happen for everybody. Dude, I'm all about win-win. How's that not a good thing?
Oh, it's great.
Right?
And for me, I grew up skateboarding, and snowboarding was like a huge part of my life. Moved out west. I was a sponsored snowboarder. Like I used to compete a lot in like big air and half pipe.
Cool.
But like as a kid, like a young kid, that was like the thing. You just wanted to be sponsored. It didn't matter. It was like, I just want to get to that level of being sponsored. Yeah. You get the free gear, give me one free thing, and it was like the most glorious experience.
It feels like you're legit, right? At that point, like you've made it. Like, okay, I'm being acknowledged for being good at what I do. Totally. I'm serious, yeah.
And that's just, I'm sure the same feelings out there with the young kids now. It's like
absolutely
they want that recognition, and that is the synergy, and then you go out and you do whatever you can do for that brand because you're so stoked that they believed in you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a real thing, and it's really cool. I got to live that and see how that works, and so I think there's a lot to relationships and stuff that are important, and that's why, like the parties and all that, it's all relationship building and good vibes for the community and whatever sport or whatever thing. And there were some really fun, crazy parties and stuff. And then, at some point I also stopped going to sometimes just because like, I got a family and stuff, and I don't need to be, necessarily drinking as much or whatever, and also for me, remember, it's kind of like work too, because I'm doing this every day, I'm living it. And it might sound a spoiled attitude, but it gets a little old too, right? Of course, just because you got to do that. And so back to our question way back before, I definitely think that I took things for granted while I was in the middle of it. When I'm sure that Oompa Loompas in Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory were over it at times too, right? If that was a real thing. So it's the same thing,
Yeah, no, you can have too much of anything, and everyone needs a break.
Yeah.
So the last kind of topic I want to talk about, like obviously we've talked so much about Oakley, about your design, but that's not your whole identity. You are still a designer, and you have your own design. You contract yourself now for design. You want to tell us about like some projects you've worked on since you've left, and like what do you have coming up, or who you excited about working with, or?
Well, that's interesting. So I have my own little design firm or business. It's called PYD. Not really creative. It's just my initials and the word design.
But the work is creative. So that's
the work is creative. So the interesting thing about my business is, it's pretty confidential.
Okay.
So I've worked with different brands, and some big, some small, some medium, but I keep everything confidential.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, I mean, there's exciting stuff. There's stuff I think is cool, but the idea is that just like at Oakley, no one knew me. I was just designing for the brand, and the stuff was good and it worked. So for these brands, it's the same thing. I feel like, it's their brand. They need to do what they need to do with it. And I do different things. Some of them I'm designing stuff. Some of them I'm just advising.
Okay, cool.
Because I've built a whole design department. I've built all kinds of structures and things, right? So I can help in different ways.
Interesting. And when you say advising, it's like consulting. You'll go in and maybe help them build a team? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, team or strategies.
Yeah.
Or, you name it, dude. From product development, actual designing, training, whatever. So I do all kinds of stuff, which is cool because honestly, I'm just doing what my old job was.
Yeah.
Right? from training designers and processes, communication, developing new things, strategizing how we're going to do something, sitting there designing it myself. So I'm just doing what I did before, but now I'm doing it for myself and at my own pace. I literally work out of my house. A lot of times my dog's hanging out behind me. I love that. And I'm pretty selective about who I work with because I'm not searching for more work because I don't want to do crazy hours like I used to do. 50, 60, 80, travel all over the place. It's a nice pace. It's a good balance for me. In fact, I have to turn down, clients that want me to do work because again, I can't, I'm only one person. I have a team that I can scale up depending on the depth of projects that come, and I do. Oftentimes I don't really advertise. Oftentimes people come to me through either the industry or, my reputation or whatever. And they come to me because of the stuff I've done, which is all fairly unique, somewhat iconic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So I don't, I keep it confidential. Keep it kind of
that's
cool.
fair. I mean, obviously, we'd love to hear about some cool shit. I think
Hey,
it's confidential.
I'll tell you what, there is cool shit, and I never say never.
Yeah.
And, for anybody that is following my Instagram page, I do, eventually I feel I'm going to show some cool things that, we won't just be talking about stuff from the past, like, talk about history. We can talk about present. We can talk about future.
So, question, like, is it confidential? And obviously, I totally respect your confidentiality. But on your principles or on actual contractual deals you have with your clients?
On some, it's actually, let me think about it. It's contractual. It's on principle, and it started contractually because I'll tell you how it started. I didn't do freelance work before because I was working so much, and I don't need to work more.
Yeah.
Not from a money standpoint or time, I just don't, But then, once I had time, like after the pandemic, and okay, I get people coming at me. Okay, let me do one, and it was a cool one. I got recommended from someone high up in their organization, and talked to them. Okay, this sounds interesting. Okay, I'll do it, and then they're substantial size brand and they want to keep it all confidential. I'm like, that's fine. No big deal.
Yeah.
And as I did it and I thought about it, I like this. This is kind of cool, right? Like I keep my anonymity, I'm more of a behind the scenes guy. I mean, I can be up front and on stage if I need to, but I like not being noticed also. And so I started going down that route and then projects would come that way and I kind of kept it that way. And I kind of like it, and again, it may change.
I respect it too, because, most people are the opposite and they want to share and be recognized for those things. And I respect that you want to, you respect the client and keep it quiet and just go about your work for your clients.
Yeah. Contractually, in the contracts that I have, they just need my permission to use my name, right, in anything. But I will tell you that when people find me, they want to use my name because they found me because they found out who does some of the stuff in my name, right? And as a person and growing up the way I did, obviously I'm Asian and in our culture, my family, there's pride, there's, what you do for the family. Well, your name is everything, right? All my efforts, I'm constantly trying to do my family proud. Both my own family, my parents, my father passed away, but he's looking down. I'm doing everything I can to continue the great work my father did in building our name.
Yeah.
And
do you
I'm
feel
gonna do
like
my part.
they're proud of what you had accomplished in your career?
Oh yeah. I'm very thankful. My father is always very, he's super proud of our culture, being Chinese. And for him, he is so proud that his immigrant son, I came to the U.S. from Singapore when I was about 3 years old. And I grew up here, baseball, apple pie, Boy Scout, the whole deal. And immigrant son working becoming a professional, working in a very American company at that time,
Yeah.
doing well, and basically getting as high as you can get in my particular expertise, right, as a designer.
Yeah.
The vice president of design in an American company that's well known and respected for the work that I do. Dude, my dad was beaming, right?
Yeah.
And that made him so happy. He was so proud. My mom was proud, and I was so proud that I made them happy, right?
That's amazing.
And it's also, for my own kids, I know they think it's cool, but when they were growing up, it's just dad.
Yeah.
Right. But there's times where it took their cousins or somebody else to tell them, hey, do you know what your dad did? Or, because we don't talk about it. We're just,
I think,
but they understand
as
now.
they get older that they start to, it'll hit them differently.
Yeah.
Right?
They understand.
Sure.
They understand now, I think, much more. And that's okay. That's fine. Because I'm just their dad. We don't need to, if they're all going into design, it would be different. And I would, train them and all that, but they're finding their own path. One of them might do design thing, but again, she's on her path. And just like my parents let me choose, they just supported me as best they could. I'm following the lead of my parents, right? I'm going to support them as best I can, encourage them, still correct them if they screw up big time, right? But in an encouraging way. So for me, again, because of all that, my name, is everything. And my word, cliche, my word is my bond. Like, I'm only as good as my word. If I tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. If I'm not going to do a good job, I probably just won't do it. But if I'm going to do it, I am going to give it my best shot. And if I put my name, because here's the thing about putting your name with brands, you can do great work. That brand could fuck it up.
Yeah, like in production or in marketing or many things.
Now your name's on it.
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about that?
Yeah, totally. Well, because when you mentioned that, I was going to ask, like, have you ever thought maybe to Peter Yee becomes a brand and you actually make some products on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I have. I've thought about that. I have some ideas, and that's the one place for sure I would use my name.
Then you control the process.
Yeah, I'd control everything. And also think about it. It's got your name on it. It's, you might as well put your face on it. Like, okay. And, I think also for me, there's a bit of self-imposed pressure because I think people know me for doing a lot of these designs. So I think people's expectations, as well as my own, if now Peter's going to step from behind an Oakley logo or behind any other brand and it's his, well, that has to be really cool, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure and potentially not the support that you would have had at an organization like Oakley, have to figure out different departments that you might not have been able to navigate or learn to navigate. So it's a different beast, 100%.
Absolutely. And trust me, Drew, I've thought about it. I made, strategic plans how I would do it. At the same time, though, I think where I am in my life is maybe different than a lot of people. A lot of people want the fame and fortune and all that. I don't really want that. I feel blessed that, that my name is associated with a very good brand and with very good work. I honestly feel very blessed. And, I cherish my time with my family, with my dog.
Especially when they're young.
Spearfishing,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
I have some clients, they know like, oh, hey, we're going to have a meeting, blah, 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 meeting Wednesday for this. I go, ooh, hey guys, full disclosure, I'm thinking about going spearfishing that day.
The tides are looking perfect. So
yeah, tide and winds are down. And they'll go, okay, well, we'll move it to Thursday sometimes. Or, hey, go for it. I'll just catch up with you guys, right? Yeah. So, I'm trying to balance my life differently because I did live the other life of just on the gas all the time. At a time when I was younger and had more energy and strength, but it was for another brand, not for me. Now it's for me. I know what it goes into building a successful brand, honestly.
Yeah.
It is a shit ton of work. And if I choose to do it, I know what I'll sacrifice. And I don't know that I'm willing to pay the price.
Yeah. Totally.
Because I don't need a lot. I'm pretty, I'd love a huge yacht to go spearfishing, but I don't need that, and I know the price tag of going that route. And there's nothing wrong with people that want to do that, but I know myself and I know how hardcore I can be. And I'm afraid of what that would entail.
Yeah.
Also.
I mean, I empathize with that because I'm still a little bit on the gas, but I'm making moves to kind of get back to like a manageable pace. And my kids are at an age, I have 6 and 10-year-old. So it's like, I don't want to miss these years now. And again, like you could also, when the kids say go to college, then it's like, then you kind of like all this time opens up where you're like, maybe then I'll do a new project, right? But you don't want to miss these years with your family when they're very important, and I totally feel that and respect that, because too many people are on the other side where they're just, they don't know anything else but the gas.
Yeah.
Even if it's not productive or working in their best interest, they still do it,
I just saw like a reel of, like it's usually a comedy reel, but I can't remember the name of the guy, but he had someone on who was a young, good-looking young guy talking about his work, and he starts tearing up and crying because he's asking himself, he's grinding through doing so much, but his relationship, he's seeing his daughter grow through his FaceTime on his phone. And then the host, who's usually, it's all comedy and stuff, he's crying because he's telling him it doesn't get better.
Yeah.
Right? So I've seen these stories. My family's filled with entrepreneurs and stuff, and I've seen what it takes to do that. And that's why I chose to go into a profession where I can work for somebody else. It's different now. I have my own business, but I'm doing my business on my terms.
Yeah, and there's freedom in that.
There's freedom in that.
There's freedom in all different things. Freedom really can be a state of mind if you break it down, but now you can go spearfishing, you can put some things, you can pick who you want to work with. Yep. A lot of freedom.
Yeah, and so I think I think the journey is different for everybody, but it's finding that balance. And you're wise enough to understand and realize, look, these times with your kids are precious, and you only got one shot. And I think my wife, when I was super busy doing that, she was always there to help remind me, it was pretty flexible at Oakley. I'd take my kids to school most of the time, walk them or whatever. Most days I'd take some time off, go read stories in their classroom, go on field trips, all that. Sometimes I have to go back to work, which is fine.
Yeah.
But those are things that I remember. Those are things they remember. And those are the things that are important, right? Like those cliches, you're never going to wish you worked another day at work on your deathbed. Like I don't,
No.
I wish I had more times like that. And now, now it's the same thing. So, hopefully you're a smart and successful businessman where you can balance out your business and have your life the way that's meaningful for you.
Yeah.
And, when we're young and we work hard and grind and have to prove ourselves, hey, that's how it is. That's what you have to do. But you get to the point where you're good at what you do. You can balance it out. You can juggle, 10 things in the air and still be okay. All right. Then you have some opportunity to maybe guide things better for yourself. Right.
Yeah.
So I think I'm doing that now. I'm trying to take my experience, my, 15 minutes of fame or whatever, and position it so that I can still be, creative, productive, helpful to brands and whatever else, while at the same time enjoying the work, making a difference, making a living that allows me not to crank 40, 50, 80 hours a week and go spearfishing, spend time with family, go take my wife and my dog to Laguna Beach and hang out for the afternoon or whatever,
Yeah. Even that's a balance, right? Because you're obviously smart enough to know that what you've done is impactful and it can create jobs for you in the future, but it's not your everything identity, which some people live into that too, right? Where it's like, I am only defined by this thing that I have done or what people know me as, which isn't reality too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think probably for me, because the way my journey through Oakley was at Oakley, this is what we do and stuff. Outside of Oakley, a lot of people didn't know what I did for a living because everything I dealt with was all proprietary knowledge. And then I didn't like somewhat acquaintances or strangers asking me to buy stuff or get stuff for them. Right. So like, I played hockey for a long time. I did all kinds of things. And people would ask me, what do you do for a living?
Like your hockey bros would be like, hey, can I get a free pair of Oakleys or something?
Yeah. You would get that from strangers. People that just, you go to a dinner party, you go to something, and, oh, hey, can you get me this or that, right? Just normal. And so whenever I'd have conversations, oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an accountant. Dude, the convo would just stop.
Yeah.
And here's the thing.
About that
if they asked me stuff, I could actually answer some things because my wife was an accountant. And I will tell you that.
Play it up, eh?
I would tell you that my wife does not like that joke. But I tell her, she goes, it's not funny. I go, it's funny. It's just not funny to you. But I know enough about, that industry to get around any questions that I get, right? So, and I did that because, look, you're either going to like me or not like me because, let's say in this case, we're hockey bros. You're going to like me because I'm a good guy and I'm a good hockey player and I'm a good teammate.
Yeah, I'm
your
right wing man and we're going to go to battle here, yeah.
You're going to like me or not, or in spearfishing or whatever else. You're going to like me for that endeavor, not because of what you think I can get you, not because of any kind of ulterior reason. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And I think later, become friends. Like, okay, now they know. Okay, now maybe I'll tell them if it comes up or whatever, and probably more so now that I've left Oakley, because during my time with Jim, back in the day, and you might get this reference. Everything was in the Dome of Silence, man. Right? Everything was on the dome.
The Thunderdome of Silence.
Yes, the Thunderdome of Silence. But that was just kind of the environment I grew up in professionally. It's just everything's secret, everything's quiet because everybody wants to know what we're doing. They'll see it when it comes out, and then by then it's too late for them to emulate or copy.
Yeah, and especially too, like you said, there's patents, there's proprietary design. Patents are pending for periods of time. Stuff gets leaked. That's bad news, man. Yeah,
so I just grew up not talking about it. So now that I've left, it's fun to talk. That's why I started my Instagram, to just share, because collectors would ask me questions or people would ask me, and so I decided, let's just share it and see what happens, and it's kind of cool, right? And and it's grown that way, and then sharing knowledge and stuff is cool, and then it's basically what I do in my profession, right? With my business, it's just more outwardly. The profession part is just kind of on the quiet side, right?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to get great value out of this. It was definitely insightful into your design life and your life in general. And it's been great to get to know you here. Is there anything, I think we'll end it there. We've been on for 2 hours, but
oh, wow.
Anything else you want to end it with, or any last words? Or
No, I guess to your audience, if you're into, I think the vintage world and creativity, keep pursuing it, try to challenge yourself and see how you can put your spin on what vintage is versus maybe just easily, emulating something that's already been done. I would say give yourself that challenge. See, can you add a twist to it that maybe you're the next thing, right? You're the next evolution of vintage. I think that's a good worthy cause.
And that to speak on that briefly, but there's vintage. We sell used clothes. It's a simple concept, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a million things within this world that can be innovated. How you sell it, how you present it. Do you make a new way to sell it? Do you make a new way to present it? Do you make a new way to source it? There's be creative in all of the things. It doesn't have to be in designing something, but it's just be creative in your own.
Absolutely. Just think of the word innovation, right? Just make it better, little by little. You keep making it better, man. Lord knows where you'll be. Lord knows where we'll all be, right? Yeah. It's, so I would say, that's a good pursuit. And then, I'd invite anybody that wants to see more of the stuff I've done and maybe some of the things I'll do in the future, you can follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, we'll put that on the screen here.
Yeah.
Definitely follow Peter on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, that's been awesome. This has been very inspiring. It's been great. Thank you for coming on with me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you guys for asking me. I really appreciate it. This is fun. This is cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Signing off.